Hi, my name is Hannah Batsel, and I'm a book and paper artist. Today I'm going to be talking to you about mail art, which, as the name implies, is just any art that's sent through the mail. It can be a package or a letter, something painted, something written on, something drawn on. Obviously, mail is a great thing to receive on the best of days, but in these times when it's a lot harder to hang out with people in person, and there's a lot less going on to keep you entertained, it's especially important to be sending fun pieces of mail to your friends and family. It's also really important right now to be supporting the US Postal Service, which is a really great thing that's having a little bit of trouble financially. This is sort of a double whammy in that department. I'm going to go through 3 projects of kind of pop-up or interesting, unique pieces of mail art and how you can do them. Just remember that if you really do want to send these through the mail, the USPS has a couple of size guidelines. The smallest thing that can be counted as a letter, let me refer to my card, is 3.5 by 5, and then the largest thing that you can mail as a letter is 6 1/8 by 11.5. So you can sort of scale the projects in this video to any size, but if you want to actually mail them, keep them within those 2 guidelines. All right, let's get started. So while mail art can be as simple as a decorated envelope or stickers or something that makes mail a little more fun to receive, it can also be kind of complex. So here are some that I've done before. You can see that just this being a painted up envelope makes it a fun thing to open. You can have strange sizes of art. This is a little small for the Postal Service, but fun if you put it in a bigger envelope. You can have textured envelopes that are fun to touch. This one is just a fun guy cut into a fun shape. Or you can have unexpected fold-outs. Here's a really long guy. But today I'm going to show you 3 things in particular. I'm going to show you how to do an effect like this, where when we pull out whatever's in the envelope, we get a color change. I'm going to show you how to cram a jointed paper doll into an envelope. So this one is a crab who can kind of unfurl to lots of different legs. And I'm going to show you how to do this. A pop-up to where when the person tries to pull out what's in the envelope, you get a little effect like that. All right, let's get started. So the first thing that your mail art recipient is ever going to see is the envelope. Sometimes mail art can be too fragile to just have in its own colorful envelope, so you can put it in something a little more plain, or you can decorate the actual envelope you're going to mail it in. Envelopes are pretty easy to make yourself out of the paper that you might like. So if, for example, this is just a cheap envelope I got at the grocery store, if I were to pull this apart, like this, now I have a pattern to make my own envelopes out of the sort of paper that I want. So I would just simply put this on a piece of paper, trace it, cut it out, and then I've got my own special envelope. And it might seem like a lot of work, but some of the techniques that we're going to talk about today require painting or drawing inside of the envelope, and it's pretty hard to do that when they're already constructed. For example, our first envelope is kind of a weird shaped one like this. The simplest type of envelope, I think, to make is one like this. We've got 2 panels like this, a little flap on either side, and then we've got the flap that will actually go down into the letter. So this piece A and B are going to be the same size. These guys are going to be little flaps that fold in, and we glue to A, and then flap C is going to fold down. When you have something like this, it's a little hard when you're actually measuring out everything yourself to be able to determine how to draw all these little angles. So having something along these lines is a lot easier. You can use metal spacers if you have them, or you can just measure these out with a ruler. But having straight lines and rectangles makes everything a little bit easier. In order to achieve an effect like this, where this gets pulled out and makes a color change, we're actually going to want to use a longer envelope than usual so that there's more space for it to do the color change. Usually envelopes open like this, of course, but we're going to have to make our own that opens like this. And we're going to use a piece of paper shaped like this. It doesn't have to be exactly these dimensions, of course. You can choose whatever size is best for you. But as long as these two pieces, the two main ones, are the same size. So our top one is going to have a little flap here, and then this is going to be the main flap that keeps the letter closed. These can be whatever width you like. I would say a minimum would be about 1/4 of an inch. This is a 1/2 inch. And then as for these, again, it can really be whatever you like. Keep in mind those minimum and maximum recommendations from USPS. If you want to mail yours, the minimum being 3.5 by 5, and the max being 6 1/8 by 11.5. But this is well within that range. So, in order to make a color change, we're going to start by drawing out what we want here. I'm going to start with a dragon breathing fire for this example. And you can go ahead and just draw your dragon here. Give him some horns. Some teeth. Maybe he should be a little angrier. Give him some claws for good measure. Maybe some spikes. And a couple of scales for good measure. All right, pretty fearsome, right? Get some stripes in there. Perfect. All right, so to make our dragon breathe fire, we're first going to sketch out lightly where we want that fire to be. This I did in pen, but this I'm going to do in pencil. You could always outline the fire in black, but I think that part of the appeal of this effect is that it's unexpected. And if there's a black outline of fire already there, people are going to know that something is going to happen there. So I'm just going to lightly sketch it out in pencil. And another fun thing you can do with this effect is this doesn't all have to be one hole. So I can make a couple of little kicking flames around here. The only thing that I have to be careful of here is that it can't touch this flap, because if you imagine that this is going to be glued here, anything that reaches this line is going to be covered up. So it looks like I'm pretty good here. That one's a little close, but it'll be just fine. Okay, so my next step is I'm going to take my X-acto knife. You can use a scalpel, whatever works for you. And I'm going to cut out this shape that I just did in pencil. Make sure, of course, that you don't cut like this, because then you'll be cutting through our whole envelope. Just cut this one panel. All right, now if you want to just erase those light pencil marks from before, that'll make a world of difference in how clean the final product looks. Okay, so I've got my drawn dragon, my cutout flame. What we're gonna do now is fold it over. And again, we're gonna just lightly take our pencil and draw a quick outline of where that flame is in there. So if you can see that, we've got a really light guideline for where our actual image is going to be. Now, I think that this effect looks really good when there's a color gradation, so I'm going to go from red to yellow here. I like to use this really cheap craft paint. You can buy it at just about any craft store. This is Americana brand, and this is Delta Ceramcoat. This one's my favorite, but this one's also pretty good. I would just not recommend getting the craft brand, the absolute cheapest one. It's just too watery, but these guys are pretty good, and they're like $1 or something per bottle. So we're just gonna shake it up. And I like to do this where I shake up the bottle, kind of pool some in the cap like that, and I just paint right out of the cap. Saves a little paint, and it's a little cleaner. So you can get as detailed here as you want, but you really don't have to be super clean with it, as long as we cover up all of the area that we did that pencil drawing of. Let's see if I can get a little more paint. All right. I usually keep a paper towel around just so I can quickly dab off my brush. And we're going to go to the next color, which is this orange. It's good to do this when the paint is still wet if you're trying to make kind of a gradient, because the two colors can sort of blend in with each other a little better that way. Just get some out of the cap, start to blend it. Really make sure you get this midpoint, because this is where the blend is going to come in. All right, it's starting to look pretty good. So for our last color, I'm going to bring in our yellow. All right, so there's our gradient. Looks like a big blob right now, but when we put our fire over it, it's a nice smooth gradient. All right, so now we can put our card in there. It's good to use the same type of paper that you made the envelope out of for the card, so it's an exact color match. I used this sort of cardstock. So I'm gonna just cut a strip here that is gonna fit right in there. It's tempting to make this card the exact same size as this, but it'll fit and slide a lot smoother if you give this a good 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch all the way around. So if you make it an 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch smaller, you'll have a lot better time. Okay, so I've cut out a card that fits right in here. One thing that you can do that's kind of optional, you can see I wrote optional, to make this card a little bit easier to pull out of your envelope is to cut a kind of semicircle. Let's see if I can get this in here. A semicircle along this line. You can imagine if it's just straight like this, you kind of have to wheedle in there to grab something. This just makes it a little more apparent what's going on and how to get the contents out. So I'll go ahead and cut it. All right, there we go. And of course, if we want this to be neat, we can always either really watch where this is going to be, paint this black, or just say it's fine as is. So, to get this dragon breathing fire effect, we can just put this white piece of paper in here, and when they pull it out, he'll breathe the fire. But it's kind of nice to have a little note when you get a letter in the mail. So I'll show you how you can write a note on it and still have that effect. So we're going to put it in here behind these two flaps, because this is how it's going to fit in the final version. And once again, we're just going to lightly trace where this flame is. This guy, this guy. So now we know that we can draw or paint or write anywhere on this card except for this flame area. So I'm just gonna write a little note here. Get lit. Love. HB, that's me. And for assembly, we're going to use good old-fashioned PVA. PVA glue is super strong, super good paper-to-paper glue. And I like to use it in kind of a squirty bottle like this. I like to just paint it on with a brush. Let's see here. So to glue this together, I generally just hold it with my hands. I'm going to take little line of PVA. You really don't need a lot. And just kind of spread it with the brush. You are kind of working against the clock at this point, so I am going to do one at a time. Just simply bend this over and hold it down with your fingers. Really squeeze. That's probably good. And then this edge, again, just gonna run a really thin bead. Less is more here as long as you've got the entire area covered. Just kind of reaching in there with the brush. All right. And again, we're just going to squeeze this shut with our fingers. If you want, you can let this dry under weight, but PVA is pretty quick drying, so you can tell that just by me pressing it down is probably fine. If you get any little scuff marks, you can just take a pencil, it'll come right out. Now you'll notice that since I did cut this semicircle, we've got this little thing sticking out. If that bugs you, it's no problem. It's not going to do any damage to it if you just take some scissors and snip that off. All right. So for all of our work, we've got this dragon letter. You can go ahead and slip your note in there. And you're good to go. When you open it up, you'll be able to pull this out, whoop, and get a nice flame surprise. Now, if you don't like that the words are visible here, that's an easy problem to fix. This little pencil outline, just take the highest point, connect a line from here to here, lowest point, connect a line from here to here. And now you can't write in any of that area, but you could write above or below. You've got a nice little dragon card. Now obviously fragile parts like this have a hard time in the mail system. So if this is something that you're going to actually mail with a stamp and everything, you might want to put it in a stronger envelope or keep this design really simple. You know, just a circle or a square, something that's not going to get super banged up in the mail. But we've got a nice dragon letter. All right, let's talk about paper dolls. Okay, to make a jointed paper doll and have it fit into an envelope, we're gonna first start with our envelope. It can be any type of envelope. This is, again, just a cheap one that I bought at the grocery store. And it can be a fancy one that you made. But in order to figure out how to cram a big guy like this into a little envelope like this, we've got to figure out where our paper doll's joints are going to be. So if you think about a normal human body, something like this. Not sure if this is a normal human body, but it's at least close enough. We've got joints on the neck, elbow, wrist, and all the little fingers. We've got hips, knees, ankles. So these are all potential points of articulation where we can make our doll move. You can even put one here if you're feeling really ambitious. Cut the torso in half and have a joint here so that the top of the torso can twist where the waist would. But it's difficult to fit all of this into a tiny envelope. So the best thing that we can do is make sure that the torso, which is going to probably be the biggest part of our paper doll, can fit into here. And the easiest way to do that is to take our envelope and trace it. Okay. So we've got this rectangle here. And now we know that the torso of our paper doll is going to have to fit into that. Let's see, what kind of animal should we make? Maybe we can make a friendly zebra in a suit. I'm going to decide that my paper doll is not going to have a neck articulation. He is just going to have arms and legs. So that means his neck can stay stiff. I think zebras have black noses, right? All right, here's his head. And for the torso, we don't need to include the arms just yet. Let's just give him kind of a t-shirt without arms shape for his torso. Okay, you can tell that I've kept in all of these lines. So let's go ahead and cut him out and make sure that he fits in our envelope. Again, I'm going to use our X-acto knife. All right, we've cut out our zebra. Depending on how clean cut you want your paper doll to be, obviously this is very rough and sketchy, but sometimes it can look better clean. The sides you can see of this paper are white. And on a lot of paper dolls, if you've got a black outline like this, it really makes a difference if you just take a brush pen like this, or maybe a Sharpie, and go along the edges like this, and color in that black line. Just like that. Of course, you gotta be careful that you don't actually get any ink on your image area. But you can see that that looks a little bit cleaner than this does. But for right now, let's just figure out our points of articulation. So we've got the two shoulders and the two hips that need arms and legs now. The best way to do that is to do a sort of sausage shape. And if you imagine a person's arm looking like this, with your hands down here, very anatomically correct. It's tempting to, since this cuts off here, to cut off our arm there. However, this gives nothing for the brad to hold on to. So make sure that you cut an extra kind of circular shape like this, so that when we put our brad right here, it doesn't fall off of the edge of our arm like that. So let's see, what kind of arms does our zebra want? I think for this one, I will do elbow and knee joints too. So I'll just make two of these kind of sausage shapes. And these will be my two upper arms. And then for my lower arms, I'll just do a quick couple of these. Let's go ahead and cut these out. All right, let's look at our handiwork and how this is gonna look. So if we put one here, one there, and one there. It's a pretty happy dude. I guess that zebras probably need stripes on their arms too. So I'll just quickly add that in. Perfect. All right, where to put the brads? So I like to use these Recollections mini brads. These are the smallest that I've been able to find. They come in a lot of different colors. I tend to use a lot of black ones because I think they blend in well with black outlines. But the white ones also are great for white paper. They have like pink and pastels, and I think they have some brass ones too. So let's bust these open and use these for our zebra. The best way that I've found to put the brad in is to take an X-acto knife, find the place where you want to put it. It's really helpful to lay it out like this first so I can see where I want these arms to actually lie. And then you can just kind of in the middle of this circle, if you imagine that this is a circle, we want to put our brad right in the middle. So I do just a quick punch in there. And then I can see on the actual body where that punch ended up right here. And where it did, I'm just going to make a tiny little X. Same here. Just going to make a little tiny X. It's also good to sort of experiment about what looks better, this on top of this or this on top of this. I think that this looks a little better because it looks like he's wearing a shirt. So I think I'm going to go ahead and put the brad in. I'll use white because it blends in with my white paper. Into here, my little X, and then into here. And then you want to flip them over and spread this out. Just like that. So he doesn't have a hand yet, but we've got the start to our zebra. I'm going to go ahead and put together the rest of the arms. Okay, making the legs is pretty straightforward. It's kind of the same as the arms, but we're just going to get a little bigger and longer. Make sure again that you don't get too long, no longer than this of course, but we'll do the same sort of sausage shapes. One like this, and one like this. And then for his feet, let's give him some cool boots here. Very cool. All right. Oh, he's got one heel higher than the other. There we go. So I'll just cut these out. Okay, so let's assemble, see how we're looking. Oh yeah, what a stand-up guy. Let's go ahead and draw some shorts for him. And then put some stripes. All right, and I'll go ahead and put in the brads. Give him some top of his pants. right, he's all done. He's a festive little dude. So you can see now that we've managed to make a big paper doll that can fit in a small envelope. Let's see how we did. Now, to fit these guys, you're probably going to have to scrunch him up a little bit. So fold his arms in. Remember, we can't be any larger than the torso. So if we kind of put him in this hide and seek position, we should be able to fit him right in. Ready to put in the mail. Okay, our last mail artifact is going to be the most complex. You can tell there's a lot of moving pieces going on with this one. And the envelope template that we're going to start with looks a little weird too. So we've still got our basic panel A, panel B, and a flap to close it with these two connecting pieces. But we've also got these two little extra flaps right here. And again, this can be anywhere from 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch, but when we fold these in, when we fold this up, it's going to go like this. These two pieces are going to be glued down to this with a little extra space in between. And our flap is going to close like that. That'll be our envelope. We've also got this kind of hat-shaped piece of paper, and this needs to be a little bit smaller than this panel and just have two chunks cut out of it. The width of this top of the hat, it needs to be able to fit right in between these two little flaps. But the length of this chunk that you cut out can really be anything, as long as you've got a good at least inch of paper down here as the little base of the hat. Thirdly, we're going to need this piece, and this is going to be our movable piece, the piece that goes in and out of this slot. So the hat is what you pull, this chunk is what goes in and out, and then this is our main envelope. Let's see, let's do a little rocket ship. So this design requires a slit right here. In this one, it's very small because the only thing that has to go in and out is this really thin sword. But in this one, I'm going to go a little bit bigger, so you can see that I've marked off here. Again, this height doesn't matter so much. You can kind of go as deep in as you want or as high as you want. But the higher that you go, the flimsier this piece right here is going to be. And the deeper you go, the less material can be revealed when you pull something up. So let's go ahead and cut this slit. Just like that. And then for our rocket ship, we are going to put our hat inside, put these two little flaps over it, fold this down to see how much room we're working with. So the initial imagery, the first thing that they see when they open the envelope, has to fit on this rectangle. So if it's going to be our rocket ship, I can just draw this little guy just like this. Put some windows in there. Perfect. Okay, and now we have the rest of this space to put our revealed imagery. So since we're going to make it blast off, I'm going to go ahead and draw some clouds. Okay. And since we've got the paint, why not go ahead and add a little color too. If you color outside the lines a little bit, it's okay because we're going to cut this out anyway. Just put a little bit of yellow for some highlights in here. Okay. Probably not the most convincing rocket in the world, but let's cut him out. Okay, so we've got our rocket blasting off. And what we're gonna do now is put this hat down where it's supposed to be. And then we're gonna take our rocket and put it through the flap from this side, just to make sure that we're gonna see what we want. So if you imagine here, someone is gonna take this, pull it up, and get this rocket blast off. Looks pretty good to me. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark where these two meet. So it looks like, if I put the hat in there, the edge of the rocket is about right here. This kind of area right here, and that's where I'm going to put my glue. So let's take our glue back out, take our hat, just put that little bead just glue like that. And then we're going to pull our rocket out and we're going to glue it right in that area, just on this little flap. Perfect. Okay, now here's a bit of a tricky part. We're going to take this, turn it upside down, and put only the rocket into this flap. So we're sort of sandwiching this little strip with our rocket piece. And where the rocket hits, right here, we're going to glue that down too. A lot of PVA can go, or a little of a PVA rather, can go a long way. So even though it looks like not a whole lot of the rocket is going to be attached right there, it's more than you would think. So I'm just going to take a little bit on a brush like this. Just brush back there. And stick it down. Again, I'm just holding it with my finger for just a second. That's really all it takes. Okay, so that's our main mechanism. And really, this alone is enough to stop itself when you get to this point. But the reason that we have these little, I guess, hat brims is so that they can be stopped by this too. Just a little bit of extra strength. Okay, now this is super important. When you glue these flaps to close the whole thing together, this piece has to be behind the flap. So, for example, if I were to glue these up and then just put it down like this, the hat would actually get glued into the flap. So we don't want that to happen. What we're gonna do is glue up this piece. Take our brush. Make sure not to get any on the inside. And we're just going to sort of scooch the hat over a little bit. Bring it up again and close. This flap right here is also going to be glued down. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on it. Again, don't get it on the rest of this piece right here. And just fold it in and hold it down. Okay, so that side is glued. Give it just a second to dry, but your hat piece should be able to slide underneath that flap that we just glued down. So all that's left now is to do the other side. And again, it's really important that this hat be behind that flap. So this is correct. Let's take our glue bead, just like that. And glue. You can go ahead and do this at the same time if you like. Might make it a little easier. So fold that in and just press down. All right, so then what we have is something where when the recipient pulls this up, they get a little rocket blasting off. And of course you can also decorate around here, include more imagery around here. The only thing that's going to change is this rocket. If you're a little worried that they might not know what to do when they open your mail art, you can even put here little message. And then even a little blast off. So you can imagine also that this is pretty safe to send in the mail. There's not really a lot of moving parts on the outside. There's nothing that's really fragile or going to get damaged on the outside. So if you want to go ahead and just put a stamp on this address, pop it right in the mail, it'll probably be just fine. And then when they open it, it's a little treat. With all of the examples that I gave today, we used mostly cardstock. Cardstock is really handy for paper dolls. Something is way more likely to bend on the joint and not in a place where you don't want it to bend if it's a stiffer paper. Again, moving parts are always pretty good to do with cardstock as well, just because they are mechanical pieces and they're gonna want to try to break and put tension where you don't want tension. So it's good that they're strong pieces. And then in our dragon example, it's good to use cardstock here because this needs to be a really sturdy base. You can see that this piece is a little floppy. If that were a piece of paper, you know, it would be all over the place. And then this just is a nice sturdy thing to pull out when it's made out of cardstock. So those are our three mail art projects for today. Bye-bye. And that'll do it for our mail art intro tutorial. Thanks for watching today and have a good one. Bye-bye.